We are live. Ill Will, welcome to Hip Hop Talks. Appreciate you pulling up on us, bro. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm in sunny LA, sunny California. I can never complain these days. So it's a beautiful day.
Yes, sir. Beautiful day. I'm out here in New Orleans. I believe Cooper's in Atlanta and AG is in West Virginia. So we all spread out right now. Pause.
We got the pause game already. I can say this: aside from the sunshine today, we've woken up and Kendrick finally responded to Drake. So you know what I'm saying?
Yes. How do you feel about Let's start there since you brought that up. Let's start there. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm loving it. You know, as a hip hop fan, it's nice to see people actually making an effort. I mean, you know, there's conspiracy theories that this is all like put together to help bring hip hop back to the forefront after the whole, you know, sales dipping last year to quote unquote 40%, or as Juicy J would tell it. And we didn't have a number one until like Easter last year. So some people are saying it's that, but I don't think it's anything to do with that. I just think people just got tired of the bullshit. It was more about quality and people getting at people. It's kind of like the NBA these days. Everybody's too friendly. And when people get at each other, that's when the real lyricists come out and show. And so I'm loving it. And listen, I'm a Drake fan, right? So I like it when he raps. And I like that he's actually he's like, yeah, let me show you something. You know, he's not this, you know, preppy kid from, you know, from the reality TV show, or not the reality TV show, but the TV show in Canada that he did. He ain't that no more. He can rap just because he got comfortable, made all this money and had all these number ones. He can still rap. So I'm enjoying it. But I love Kendrick too. I just wish Rick Ross would stay out of it. He hasn't really got a place right now.
Say that again, please. Yo,
Like,
stay away from this.
listen, I love Rose for what he brings to the table, and I think he makes
Right.
great music. But a lot of his great music is with other people, namely Drake. So
Facts.
I feel like he just needs to stay away from this, and this whole white boy thing. He just needs to stop. Like, stay
Yeah.
out of it, Ross. Like, let Kendrick, Cole, and Drake go at it. Like, leave him alone.
Hold on, Will. Can you teach me how to speak with a British accent? Because I've been saying all the things that you just said, and people have been calling me crazy and blasting me out the water for me saying all the stuff that you just said. So maybe it's the accent. So when we get done, I'm going to need some vocal coaching training on how to speak like I'm from Brixton or something.
Well, I mean, I'm not from Brixton, but yes, if you would like some lessons, I can see what I can do, bro.
Yeah.
In it, you know. Nah, it's the funny thing is you've probably been saying around people that, you know, really want to get into the conversation. I haven't been really voicing much of what I feel on social media recently, just because I've had every time a track comes out, I've got my own shit going on, so I haven't really been able to get into it like that. But I definitely have my WhatsApp groups, my iMessage groups. I've got groups that are more Kendrick than Drake, and some that are more Drake than Kendrick. So I kind of like to get involved there. One of my boys back home. I mean, what time is it right now? It's probably like almost 2 a.m. in England right now, and they are still going at it about this Kendrick track. And it's 2 a.m. back there, and they are going hard. So I love seeing this. It's bringing people together again and talking about real, you know, real rap, real bars. And yeah, it's good for the culture. That's really what I can say. It's just good to see that people are talking about hip hop again in a better light than some, you know, bullshit ass quality tracks.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought England up, and because Drake alluded to on the push-ups freestyle that they can't tour outside of the U.S. You know what I mean? They don't have fan bases like that over there. So, namely talking to Future when he went at him on that track. So, over in England, what does it look like as far as the hip hop landscape, as far as legacy acts that can tour over there, and the current acts such as like Drake and Kendrick Lamar? What are some of the biggest artists that come through over there?
It's you know, it's crazy because I've always looked at, obviously I look at it from a completely different lens. Being, you know, I moved to LA in October, so I lived my whole life in the UK, and my whole hip hop education was while I was in the UK. And my first concert I ever went to, like hip hop concert, was Eminem and Dr. Dre together at Brixton Academy in the year 2000, and it was before the Marshall Mathers LP came out. And I've seen, and then my second show was Nas actually at the Forum, which is in Kentish Town. It's near Camden. And so I've seen all these like huge acts come through, but obviously it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But the legacy acts, this is what I love about the UK, is we don't take shit for granted, right? Because we know we are not in the US. When a legacy act comes through, they sell because we don't know if we're ever going to see them again. So, you know, Onyx will come over and sell out. EPMD will come over and sell out. I've been to Big Daddy Kane shows. I've been to, who else have I seen? Like Slick Rick shows. Like when they come out, they sell because we don't take it for granted. We're like, oh my God, this person might not come again. There's actually a venue. It's kind of a venue come restaurant. It's like a restaurant in Brixton called, it's called the Chip Shop. But if you take the C off and the S off, it's actually hip hop. And they have like a mural on the outside of Big L, Eazy-E, Tupac, ODB, Biggie, and Big Pun. And what they've started doing is bringing acts in, like who was it? Cormega was there recently. MC8 was there recently. Chuck D came through, and they perform in this chip shop, and it's really small. But like the culture, like everybody comes out because it's like a huge deal to us. So the legacy acts are always straight, and every time I sit down and talk to them, they love coming to the UK because they get the love. Because there's no, you know, out here, I can't speak for everybody. You guys will be able to speak for this more, but it's kind of like, oh well, they come through here all the time. So it's like, yeah, we'll catch them on the next wave. Right. But for us, it's never like that. We don't know when that next time might be. And I still have that mentality. Funnily enough, last Saturday, so a few days ago, over the weekend, I went to Stagecoach Festival, which is like a country festival in where Coachella is. But I had bought tickets to go and see Devin the Dude on Saturday in LA. So I went to Coachella. Yeah. I went to Stagecoach, and I drove back Saturday just to see Devin, and then went back to Indio Sunday for the rest of the festival because I don't know when I'm going to see Devin again because he barely comes to the UK. This was my opportunity to see him. We hooked up. He signed a copy of one of his albums for me. We kicked it, and I literally left, went home, drove back to Stagecoach. So I'm still in that mentality of, you know, we're losing a lot of our greats, and you know, we can't take stuff like that for granted. If you really love this culture and you're about this, you need to go see these people, support them. So I went to see LL Cool J when he did his tour, at the end of last year when I was in LA. And it was him, Salt and Pepper, Rakim, Chuck D, Ice-T, and it's like, yo, this is incredible. Like, you know, I don't understand where we are, where people are shitting on legacy acts and why they won't go and see them. But that's like a whole other thing. But as far as Drake, Kendrick, Future, Drake will go anywhere and sell out. Like, let's not be around the bush. Like in the UK, it's like his second home. He'll always tell you that his favorite city in the UK is Birmingham because it was the first place he ever performed. He was the support act on Jay-Z's Blueprint 3 tour. And that was the first time Drake ever came to England. And then I went to every single Drake tour after that. And then Drake's first tour on his own, J. Cole was his support act in the UK. And then Kendrick's first show in the UK was at a spot called Electric. Was it called Electric? It's not the Electric Ballroom it's the Electric Ballroom in Camden. There's another place not to confuse it with called Electric Brixton, which is in Brixton, but Electric Ballroom in Camden. Kendrick played before Good Kid came out. And that was the first time I ever got to meet Mixed by Ali, Day Free, and I really got to, you know, be around those guys. And then every time Kendrick came to the UK, I would roll with those guys and make sure that they got what they needed. If they needed to borrow my phone, if they needed me to take them somewhere, I would help out. Probably for the first few tours, and then after that, we kind of drifted off. But I hung around Kendrick a few times, Ali. So they were there from, that must have been like 2012, maybe 11. Whenever Good Kid came out, it was maybe that same year.
2012.
12. So it would have been 2012. And then Kendrick will come out, and same thing as Drake. He'll sell out. So I don't think those two will ever have an issue, and neither will Cole. Future, I can't speak on too much because I've never seen Future live. I wouldn't proclaim to be the biggest Future fan. I think he has tracks, but I wouldn't pay to go see him live. And to be honest, I don't think he's ever really been to the UK too much for his own shows. He does festivals, but again, I'm probably not the right person to speak to on that. And Rick Ross doesn't come over too often either. But again, we don't need to talk about Rick Ross.
No, that's great perspective. I never thought about it that way. I've traveled overseas. I've been stationed overseas a few times, and the appreciation overseas is different for hip hop. It's like it's a different feeling when it comes to a hip hop artist, because I was in Japan in 2000. And I remember A Ball MJG came over, and everybody was going crazy. All the locals were going crazy, and I'm like, oh, we'll see these guys another time when I get back over to the States. But they were going crazy, and they sold out multiple nights in Japan. But I never connected the dots like you just did by saying you may not see these guys again. They may not come over here again. So we want to hold that dear to us while we have them in our possession. And I wish we could adopt that here in the States, where we treat our legacy artists, and not so much call them legacy, but call them legends, our legendary artists, and treat them with the love and care that you all treat them across seas as well. So that's great perspective. That's a good bite from us. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Hey, Will, you kind of made me feel bad because I'm here in Atlanta and I've been running into these dudes my whole life. So I'd be like, I seen that motherfucker at church last week.
Hey, listen. Atlanta is my favorite place in the world, bro. Like, I was actually supposed to, before I came to LA, I was actually meant to be moving to Atlanta, and then I got offered the job in LA, and I still may come to Atlanta to live at some point. I'm just trying to figure some stuff out, but yeah, it's the same as you. Like, I'm friends with Killer Mike and Jermaine Dupri, and like I'm running into Brian Michael Cox. Like, those are my guys. So like I know what you mean about Atlanta. It's like that. Like, you can go anywhere and everybody's running around. But same thing. Nothing's promised tomorrow, man. Like you need to. We need to give our legends their flowers while they're still here. Sometimes that's cliche to say, but it's the truth. And and if there's a show and you legitimately love that artist and the music they make, why wouldn't you go? It's like we spend money so need like seamlessly on going out to drink, going out to clubs, like on clothes and things. Why not spend money on tickets, supporting the artist, but also creating an experience and a memory for you that's going to stay with you forever? Absolutely. Like, that's kind of how I've always looked at it. I'd rather spend my money on something I love than not something that's throwaway.
Absolutely.
So with that perspective, you have the ability to see it from two different vantage points, because relevancy is a touchy topic. It can be a little bit tricky, but if you're an artist, you're always going to be relevant somewhere, so to speak. So what you spoke to in the UK, where these artists come over there and they get a certain amount of love, but in the US, their home, they may be considered quote unquote irrelevant. So, being that you can see both sides of that, how do you navigate those things in the publications?
I mean, that's a really interesting question, because you're always going to have your favorites. And for me, I always want to make sure that even if certain artists may not quote unquote be relevant, if I think they're doing dope stuff, then I'm always going to do my best to, put them out into the public space. But again, this is the thing. It's a very thin line for someone like myself, where hip hop quite literally saved my life, and I love it more than life itself. But at the same time, it is a business now, and I work in a business space, and these businesses are trying to make money. And sometimes you may post stuff about certain artists, and it may not do anything. It may fall flat on its face. So you then have to resort to posting a salacious story about Ice Spice or Sexy Red or whatever to drive the numbers up. And it's always like a balancing game. So I would always try and maybe do interviews with the legacy acts, or the legends, as we say, and then just grab news bites from it. So the article's already been, the writer or whoever's done it has already been paid for like a full scale interview, and then we can break it up and turn it into news. And then hopefully you know, ask them about artists that are out now to connect it so it is relevant. So a new story can come out where
That makes sense.
Big Daddy Kane's talking about Lady London, right? He's a huge fan of Lady London. And it's like that right there is the connection to be able to get Kane into the news while also talking about a new artist that maybe is a little bit more quote unquote relevant. It's a tricky line. And, you know, I like I said, I always have my favorites, you know, so for example, I love 50. Like I'm the biggest G-Unit head you will ever meet in your life. And 50 will always be big in the news. But I'll always sprinkle in some Young Buck because I'm a Young Buck fan. I'll always sprinkle in Lloyd Banks because I think Lloyd Banks is one of the most slept on MCs we have. Like, I will sprinkle those dudes in. But, like, 50 is the breadwinner as far as the publications go. So it's just trying to work out that balance for your audience, for yourself, for the writer that's writing it. It's a tricky one, but that's a good question.
Thank you. It was answered well. Thank you.
You kind of forged the question when you were talking about, you know, balancing between the cultural legacy acts and the people who may trend. I'm of the train of thought right now that we have like an influx of female MCs in a manner that we've never had before. And I essentially feel like they're living off a platform that Lil' Kim created.
Amen.
I mean, am I wrong for feeling that way, for one? And two, how do you even disseminate and separate the crop of female MCs that we have now? Because we have people like Sims and Love the Genius and Che Noir, but we still have people like Nikki and Meg and Lotto. And so, like, how's that balancing act going for the ladies in that sphere of those who are keeping the quote unquote torch bearing and legacy acts alive with their style and the way they approach music, versus the people who are quote unquote relevant, who trend in the female sphere?
I think that the beautiful thing about now is that there is so much variety out there. So like if you are looking for something in particular, you will find it. And whether that is in the female MC space, because again, you know, you got to mention people like Rhapsody too, right? It's like we have our quote unquote Lauryn Hill types. We have our ratchet, like super ratchet types. We have those in the middle that toe the line, like a Nicki, like a Cardi, who can actually rap. And they are like the Lil' Kim and the Foxy Browns, right? And then it's like, so there's something for everybody. So I'm never like, I don't hate on, you know, the music I don't necessarily like, because you've got to look at it this way. I mean, I'm guessing we're all of relatively similar ages. Our generation, our era, I consider my era the 90s, is that when like NWA, obviously late 80s, and you had like the Wu-Tang, Nas, Snoop, Dre, it was kind of the era of, I mean, I don't really like using the term gangster rap, but like that is essentially what it was. The generation before ours didn't like that generation because of the cussing. Like cussing became a thing, right? And then as that era kind of started to die down, then came Puffy's era, and it was the shiny suit era. And the gangster era didn't like the shiny suit era. And this then went on, and you had like the trap era with the Migos, you had the blog era, you had the mixtape era. Every generation and every era had an issue with the one that came afterwards. But I look at it differently. It's like, it's not for me. They're not making the music for me. So it's for the kids now. So I can't really hate on it because it's not for me. Because if I want something new that's dope, I know it's out there. I just have to go and look for it. And it may be harder to find now than it ever was, but I can find it. There's always something and someone. So with this, you know, everybody is talking about this crop of female MCs, and I love it. But I'm not going to go and listen to a Sexy Red EP, album, whatever. It's just not my thing. Like the way that Kim and Foxy did it, they could really rap. Like to me, Kim's verse on the Quiet Storm remix is one of the greatest female MC verses I've ever heard in my life. Like I don't care what anybody says. That verse is insane.
Absolutely.
You know, and Foxy Brown has some, like Foxy Brown on the I Shot You or Who Shot You remix, LL and
I Shot You remix.
Yeah, and Keith Murray and Fat Joe. She came with that.
Right.
And it's like, you know, I didn't really look at them as female MCs at that point. I was like, yo, they could rap. Nicki has verses like that. You know, Nicki on Monster is the one that everybody talks about.
Monster,
like these women can rap. And what these other, like we say, the Sexy Reds, what they're doing, and the Ice Spices, they're not really rapping, but what they're doing is popular. And, you know, I don't want to compare it to, you know, like the Will Smiths and the MC Hammers and the Vanilla Ices, but it's kind of that. It's still hip hop. It's just not for us. It's for a different lane. Kind of like when you look at, you know, the men, like Lil Uzi Vert. Like Lil Uzi Vert is essentially that too, right? It's hip hop, but it's like a different part of hip hop and a different sound of hip hop. And I can't hate on it because it doesn't make them whack. It doesn't make them, you know, bad people. They're just doing what they know. But I am not a fan of it being pushed as hip hop by the labels to the degree where it's like, oh, this is better than such and such. Right. You know, there needs to be a better balance. And also, it's the most influential music and the most influential culture in the world. And there is like this, you know, responsibility we have to kids. And when you start seeing some of these young kids, you know, looking at Sexy Red and Ice Spice as this is kind of like, you know, teaching these kids to twerk. I do have an issue with that, but I would never say it's up to the artist. It's not the artist's responsibility. It's the way that it's marketed and promoted. I would never be somebody who would tell an artist, you can't do that. Because I'm pro artist. You want to make what you want to make, fine. You know, that would be like us telling porn stars that they can't fuck. Like, that's just what it is. Like, if that's what you want to do, cool. But it's the way it's promoted, and porn obviously is regulated. So maybe there needs to be better regulation within hip hop for stuff like that. But it doesn't mean they shouldn't make it. Indeed. That's kind of how I.
Well, piggybacking off of that, you know, you saying that you're from that '90s era, what I consider the hip hop golden age, and then some of the newer stuff may not be for you. So, what was your response to the UK drill scene?
I can honestly say that I didn't really tap into it that much because it just didn't do anything for me. Mm-hmm. Like, I understand, you know, because they're grabbing a lot of older records, right? And they're just speeding them up and sticking the same drill beat underneath it. But like we had that version. You know, when you look at Method Man and Mary J. Blige reworking a Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell record, right? We had so much of that where we're using soul samples, and then when Kanye comes in and he's doing that with Shaka Khan, and so it's a very similar thing, but it's like for us, it doesn't seem like that long ago that like Eve's Blow Your Mind came out, and now it's being turned into a drill record, and so I guess we look at it slightly differently. But me personally, I can't. To put it this way, I have a tattoo on my right leg, which is a quote from a Big Crit song from the Vent. The song is called The Vent. And he says on that record, he says, what is it? He says that I can't listen. Hang on. It's something about not being able to listen to music unless there's soul in it. And he's not necessarily talking about soul music. He's talking about it's a feeling, right? You can feel soul.
It's a vibration, right.
And so for me, I don't really listen to music. I feel it. It's like a completely different experience, and not everybody will understand that. So I can't feel that drill music. It's not for me. It's like when I hear it, it does nothing for my spirit, like, or my soul. It doesn't make me go, oh my God. But kids love it, you know? And it's a good comparison would be when the Southern, like, crunk era came out, right? I'm like the biggest Southern fan there is. Like, and I'm talking about everybody wants to put Lil Jon as the king of crunk. 3 6 Mafia are the king of crunk. Pastor Troy was before Lil Jon. Like, Drama and what Shorty Red was doing with Drama, right? That is like a whole. So for me, it was like people were like, "Oh, this crunk ain't nothing. It's just Lil Jon screaming on a record." Nah, man. Like that, I felt that, right? That was an era for me. Like, you know, the Swisher House stuff with Paul Wall and Mike Jones. Like, that was my era. But a lot of people looked at that as like, this ain't hip hop. And then now, fast forward, the South is the biggest influence in hip hop we have today. So
Absolutely.
just because I don't like drill doesn't mean that it's not important, but it's just not my thing. But there are artists that have come out of it that I like. I really like Central C. Like, I really do. But I don't know if I'd really consider him a drill artist or if he would consider himself one. But he does spit on drill beats. But I wouldn't consider him, or I would consider him, he's like elevated out of the drill label. But no, I'm not really like a huge drill fan.
Now hold on real quick, Will. Just so you know, in Atlanta, Lil Jon precedes Pastor Troy because Lil Jon was a DJ down here, and he actually was like on So Def All Stars with Jermaine Dupri.
Oh, I know
Okay.
that. But I'm saying, like, in terms of like putting out the music, the sound.
Yes, the music.
Lil Jon has been around for a long time. But when the crunk sound came, like when crunk blew up and everybody put it on Lil Jon, Pastor Troy had been making records for years. Like, and the thing is, I think Pastor Troy is one of the most overlooked artists in Atlanta, like, and the South, period. If you think about the biggest Southern artists that have come out of that era, Ludacris, Pastor Troy was on his debut album.
Yep.
T.I., Pastor Troy was on his debut album.
Yes.
Pastor Troy was on Lil Jon's debut album. Pastor Troy was on all of these people's debut albums. He was on Lil Flip's debut album. Like, he was on all of these albums, and it's like, why aren't we talking about Pastor Troy like he was the second coming of Jesus at that point? Like, he really should have been.
So, Will, it's really funny that you're bringing Pastor Troy up, because us in the city have always wondered why those artists who he helped put on never really came back and helped put him back on. That's talking the city, because he was an integral figure down here. When I'm talking about those people I used to pass every day, Pastor Troy used to come into the bar that I managed every Saturday. So he was one of those people where it's like, oh no, I see Troy all the time. Troy used to talk to one of my waitresses. Like, I've been in the studio with him before. You know what I'm saying? But he was integral to this scene. But some of the talk down here on the scene is always like, yo, you know, all those dudes he put on in the early 2000s, and they never, like, when they got big, they never came and put him back on anything.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that's facts. I mean, I've talked to him about it too. You know, I love Troy. Like, Face Off for me is one of my favorite albums, period. Like, the album's incredible.
Vice Versa is one of my favorite songs.
Well,
everybody's favorite song. It's everybody's favorite song. Yeah.
So it's just he instills like this feeling in you that you can achieve anything, and, like, you know, the whole war element that he has, and but he, like, crosses so many lines, because obviously his dad is a pastor, and it's like, or was a pastor, rest in peace, he died recently, and it's like that in itself, and then the fact that he can actually rap, and the crunk era. It's like there's so many. We could sit here and talk about Pastor Troy forever, but like I just like to make sure that people like that get their flowers.
He's not discussed enough. So, Will, you talk a lot about the upbringing of hip hop. You were raised by hip hop. Everything you're saying is like hip hop centric. Does that tug at you a little bit, being the senior news editor for HipHopDX, because you also have the integrity of, you know, the print, right? But you also have the integrity of who you are, being raised through hip hop. And I ask that in two different folds, because what myself, AG, and Coop do, we love hip hop to the core. And a lot of our shows that we're doing is really to not only touch on the present, but we also bring in the past to the present. We're having conversations of things that happen in real time, because we were there for majority of the real time things that happen. And a lot of times the real things that happen get lost in translation. They get lost over time. Like the Lost Sea Scrolls. You don't know what was spoken back then if you weren't there. Does that tug at you every now and then? Because you have an integrity to both what your title says you are, but also who you are at the core. Does that tug? Does that kind of compete with each other?
I wouldn't say it tugs at me. I maybe it did in the beginning. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years. You know, I've written for everybody.
Absolutely.
I've done different TV shows and radio and stuff, and there's always been elements over the years. But I think I'm at a place of peace right now where it's like I've realized that you cannot do everything and you cannot be everything to everyone. And for years I fought that. I was like, because I actually have a mild form of OCD, and I actually want everything to be perfect. And it's really difficult having that while also trying to make sure that everything is perfect. Everybody's covered, everybody's talked about. And you know, it can sometimes cause me to like work later than I'm supposed to, just because I love this shit. But I wouldn't say it tugs me anymore, because I had to learn all of those things I just said. You can't do everything and represent everything. It's kind of like, I talk about this a lot with people in the world. There's tragedies every single day, right?
Indeed.
There's
Indeed.
some are bigger than others, but there's tragedy in the world daily. We cannot put our energy into every single tragedy and be online posting about, what's happening with Gaza right now, or like, certain wars, or there's all of those things. If we did that every single day, we would be putting our energy into everything. And it's
Absolutely.
like, we would not have lives. And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
we have lives to live and we have things we have to do. So it's kind of like what I like to call selective outrage. You have to pick and choose what you are outraged by and what means the most to you. So
Absolutely.
like with the George Floyd thing, for me, Black Lives Matter was one of the most important things to me because of the culture I represent. So I put my energy into that. But and then when people want to criticize you because it's like, you were all out for that, but what's happening right now? What about here? And it's like, I cannot do that for everything. And it's the same with this music and with the hip hop culture. I cannot stand up and speak about every beef or every battle or every issue that's happening. It's like even with the Diddy stuff right now. Sure, I have an opinion on it, but I can't get involved in every little thing that comes out because it's so fast moving and there's new information every day. So I just had to find a peace at some point and say, you know what? I can't report on everything at all times and have an opinion of everything at all times because I'm one human being and I have a life too. And that's a hard place to get to, especially after 20 years. But I'm doing what I can. I'm only human.
No, I respect that because everyone is chasing the algorithm and they want to be so part of that wave. And it's refreshing to hear someone like yourself in the role that you have in hip hop and how you have taken a stance in hip hop to do what's core to you and not so much following the algorithm. Because you're right. If you follow the algorithm, you'll be talking about the Diddy stuff. You've been talking about the Gaza stuff. You've been talking about all these negative things and creating negative energy into a space where there's other vibrant things happening. So I respect the hell out of that.
Yes. And that's the thing people forget. People always want to lean into negative when my MO has always been about uplifting this culture.
Absolutely.
This culture, again, saved my life. Why are we always having to focus on the negative? I understand that the negative feeds into the algorithms and it brings the traffic. And that's what I was saying earlier. There has to be a balance. So I always want to celebrate not only the legends, but like new artists that are out right now that maybe aren't getting the shine that perhaps they should. And it's just finding that balance. But again, I'm one person, at DX, there's a team of, I don't know, on the editorial side, I don't know, maybe 5 in-houses and then maybe another 5 like external. So you're looking at 10 to 12 people and they can only do so much and they work hours. And again, it's a business. And some people forget that. It's like, why haven't you reported on this? Why haven't you reported on that? Because it might not be working hours. We might not have enough manpower. We might have other things that we deem more important. That's the battle that we have. But I just don't buy into the negative comments or the trolls anymore. I've been through all of that. I've had multiple people tell me to go kill myself. I've had people tell me like, what does this white boy know about hip hop? Like I've had that my whole life, culture vulture, whatever. And it's like, you just have to learn to tune the noise out. Like you just have to. It's like, why are you going to sit there and give your energy to that? I'm a big energy person. I'm big on transference of energy. I'm a big believer in the universe. I'm very spiritual. And it's like, once you buy into that, it sticks to you and it can ruin your day, your week, whatever. And I don't want that. I only deal in positives only. Like that's my life.
Indeed. It can consume you. Absolutely.
Real talk.
Cool. What you got, man? I see you.
So I have not called you a culture vulture or white boy, but I have been critical at times of HipHopDX.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have been.
And you know what? I've been critical of HipHopDX too.
So I did have a question for you though, because I do follow your platform, but I also follow you too. So last year, you had King's Disease 3 rated as your number 4 album of the year. And you had Simba's album as your album of the year. I am of the train of thought that King's Disease 3 might be one of the best 3 or 4 rap albums of the last 10 years.
Right.
So tell me what you heard, and I enjoyed Simba's project, but I'm just curious for an album to make #1 on my list. I just didn't feel like Simba's album was that special, but you know, part of hip hop is that it's subjective. I want to hear from you why you thought Simba's album was the album of the year last year.
I mean, and just to clarify that you're talking about my personal list.
Yes, your personal list, not HipHopDX's list.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, Simba was 1. I think Ab Soul was #2.
Correct.
I can't remember what I had at 3 off the top of my head, but then yes, King's Disease 3. So for me, again, like you just said, it's subjective. I believe that Simba is special. I have it, like, you know, we talk about like right now how hip hop is so convoluted with so many eyes. Like every week there's like 50 releases on a Friday or whatever, right? And I said about it, you go and look for, you know, the dope stuff that does something for you. When I hear Simba rap, it makes me feel, first of all, it makes me feel like powerful. It makes me feel like the first time I heard Kendrick. That's what it makes me feel like. So to me, you know, this may be an unpopular take. I think Simba is like today's Kendrick. He has the potential, to be the next Kendrick. The way he raps, the way that he like voices certain things, like he really, there's so many rappers today that their tone, it's like they're just sat reading a nursery rhyme. He says that shit from his chest. Like, I really mean this and I stand on business. Like that freestyle recently where he called out J. Cole. He means that shit. Like, and I listened to that project and the way that it's put together, because I'm a big album fan. I like albums that are put together and the track listing is in a certain order so that it's, you know, it's consistent. And the way that the tracks flowed into each other, the production, Drama being on it just made all the sense in the world, because again, Drama has one of those voices that makes you believe in shit. Like he makes you feel empowered, and Simba does that. So for whatever reason, that project just had me going, shit, I feel a type of way about this, and I really believe what this artist is saying, and I see the potential in this guy. And it's not often I get that anymore. That's my point, is that there aren't many artists now where I go, I really listen to this person all the time. Simba, I literally stick that project on all the time, you know, and I don't do that very often anymore. I'm always going back to the old shit, but that's just me. And as far as King's Disease 3 goes, I'm a bigger King's Disease 2 fan. That's just me.
I love KD2.
You know,
KD2 is special.
And I
played KD2 yesterday. It's a special record.
And it's the only out of the Kate. So I reviewed KD1 and I reviewed KD2, and then I went to DX and I didn't get to review KD3. And KD2 I gave 5 to out of 5, and I don't do that very often. I can't remember how many. I probably on my hand I can count how many albums I've given 5 to, and that was one of them. So for me, it was like, if it's not better than KD2, it can be my #1. And again, it was just that was my personal list.
That's fair. So
I think that's really my answer. But again, you got to think about it this way: there's more than way more than 10 albums released in a year. So even to make a top 10 is incredible.
And that was the beautiful thing about the Nas and Hit Boy run, because you asked 10 people what was their favorite album from the run, you won't get maybe 8 to 10 different answers depending on who you ask. So
yeah, exactly. And again, this may be an unpopular opinion. I wasn't really a massive fan of the Magic projects. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get into them like I could King's Disease, and I don't know why. Like, there's no shade and there's nothing against them. Like, they're good.
I think you actually kind of explained it, because you like the album process more, and the King's Disease play out more like an album process.
Yeah, maybe it is that. If you're right.
Yeah, we'll cut that part. Don't worry about it. You're good. No,
it's all good. I'm pretty certain I told Hit Boy that, so it's fine.
Yes. So you did receive the Illmatic 25th anniversary plaque from Sony.
I did.
Is there a way that I can get that from you by any chance? I don't want to be too forward.
So let me get it straight. You want my plaque with my name on it?
Yes.
He don't care.
Sean's from Queens. You'll have to forgive him.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Like Queens in the house, it's all good. Like, no, I can honestly say no. It's probably one of my most prized possessions, next to my. I have an original pair of G Unit sneakers signed by every single member of G Unit.
Wow.
So those
Wow.
are my two most prized possessions. So I'm not giving that up, I'm afraid. But you're more than welcome to come to LA and see it in person.
I appreciate that.
So real quick, because I know you have stuff to do and you're a busy man and probably have to get out of here soon. So I've been telling people lately that I think 50 is probably the best hook writer hip hop has ever seen, and Get Rich or Die Trying is the best consistent hook performance that we've had in hip hop history. As far as like, he did every hook on that album, and every hook on that album is exceptional. It is one of the more exceptional hip hop projects of all time. I know you're a big G Unit fan, so tell me how you feel about my statement about 50 and his supreme hook writing skills and the hook writing on Get Rich or Die Trying, and where you would have him all time as an MC and as a hook writer. Because as a hook writer, I got him number one.
I don't think the hook writing thing is really a secret, and I don't think it's a hot take. I think everybody who knows anything about hip hop would say that. There's that really, really interesting interview with my brother, Young Guru. He was on the Math Hoffa podcast, and there's that whole section where he's talked about the whole thing where him and Jay and the rest of Rockefeller were like, "Oh, 50's coming," but he talks about 50's hook writing in that interview, and the way that he like describes it and the way he talks about it, it just makes all the sense in the world. Like, he's a genius. And you have to remember that it's not just him writing hooks for himself.
It's the rest of the crew.
He was writing hooks for Banks, Buck, Yayo,
Game.
and then I was about to say, and then Game.
Yeah.
And Olivia. And then you got to remember, like, Mace comes on board, he was writing hooks for Mace. Mobb Deep came on, he was writing hooks for Mobb Deep. MOP, he was writing hooks for MOP. And that's just the people
giving away hits like Magic Stick.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Those are the artists that are under the G Unit umbrella. Then it is like I believe he did some stuff with Missy Elliott. He had the Lil Kim shit. And he was just, there was no stopping him. No. And there still is. I guarantee you 50 can still write hooks better than anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
But he's just making so much money and moves in the TV space. He's like, why do I need to? So the hook writing thing, I totally agree with 1,000,000%. But again, I don't think it's like a hot take. You'd be hard pushed to find anybody else that would say otherwise. As far as an MC and just an artist overall, we haven't seen anything like 50 Cent since 50 Cent. Like, Wayne had his run in that mid 2000s to late 2000s where he was Mr. Feature. Like, he was on everything. And that was a hot run. And we can talk about Drake's decade-long run, but there has not been an explosion in hip-hop like that 50 G Unit explosion since probably Snoop Dogg and Doggy Style. Like, there just wasn't anything. Like, sure, there's things that happen in the middle, but nothing like 50. And you have to remember, like, he had everything because he had the story. The narrative about him almost dying is, and then the album being called Get Rich or Die Trying was just genius. And the fact that he overcame not only that, but the fact that, you know, the record label, like the original record label, Sony, dropped him.
Mm-hmm.
Had, you know, Power of a Dollar is an incredible album too.
It's a dope record.
And you're just like, yeah. And it was like, he was on the Into Deep soundtrack with Rowdy, and then How to Rob was on the Mad Rapper album. And so there were all these things. And I love the fact that, he was on the React track with Onyx, and he's in the video on the ice skating rink. And it's like peppering all these things in. And he was on Next's album, Welcome to Nextasy, on the song Jerk. So people kind of knew, they were like, there's this guy, but whatever. And then, like, he gets shot, disappears, takes the time to rebuild this brand, gets Yayo, gets Banks, and then drops the, obviously Guess Who's Back comes out. But then you have the 3 other mixtapes, No Mercy, No Fear, 50 Cent Is the Future, and God's Plan. And, the Eminem story and the Dre story of him hearing Guess Who's Back. And it's like, you cannot write this script.
You cannot.
You
You
cannot write
cannot.
the
No.
whole industry plant thing that some artists get now. You could never do that with 50.
Right.
And he came out and took Ja Rule and Murder Inc. apart, who were the biggest artists in the world at that point, in hip hop, certainly.
Right.
And then he sells what, 900 and no, yeah, it was in 800 and some 90,000 or something first week of Get Rich or Die Trying. Then the next album he does over 1 million the first
1.1, yeah.
Yeah.
No one was doing that but Eminem and Nelly.
Right.
And
Facts.
and again, that's like the way that people shit on Nelly annoys me, but like that's a whole other thing. But like 50, there's no run like that anymore.
Right.
Like the biggest
see
artist in
that.
the world right now is Taylor Swift.
Right.
She ain't hip hop.
She's
Drake
not.
can't do what 50 was doing, and it was gangster rap. And
Right.
the whole thing about 50 Kanye, it's like, sure, like there was Kanye beat him in a sales race, and it was the end of, you know, the quote unquote street rap, gangster rap, whatever you want to say. 50 was still making great music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the rest of the unit was still making good music and selling and going platinum. Like, again, you know, I just wish the game thing hadn't happened. But that's, you know, that's my own opinion. I just wish that they hadn't had beef, because I think that could have been huge.
They made great records together for sure.
They were special together. Yeah.
Special.
And it's interesting because all of it, the antithesis of it all really is Dre. And when you think about that, we are never getting this Detox album that has changed so many times because he gave 50 the beats for Get Rich. He gave Game the beats for Documentary. He gave Busta the beats for The Big Bang. Like, this was a constant thing. And it's like, okay, we're never seeing that album in its original form.
No.
But Dre was the beginning of all of that. And Eminem was the fire that let him match under 50. And it was like, okay, I can do this shit. And I love how 50 rides for M when people want to shit on M as well. Like, he's loyal. That's the thing I'll say about 50. He's loyal. But I wish the game thing hadn't happened, and I wish him and Buck never fell out. Because when G Unit reunited, and they did that, the Beast is G Unit, and there was another EP. They did 2 EPs. They were so good, and they went on tour together, and it was great. I just wished that they hadn't fallen apart, and Banks and him hadn't fallen out. But that's just me, and I'm just biased because I love those guys together. But yeah, no, I love that you wanted to shine a light on 50 because, you know, 50's the truth.
Indeed. We have a show coming up on Thursday where we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about G Unit. We're going to talk about Rockefeller. We're going to talk about all of the hip hop crews. We have a show called Crew Love that we're doing on Thursday. We're shining a light on all the crews that came up through hip hop and talk about their rise, their fall, talk about the best verses out of the groups and the songs. So we have all that covered on Thursday.
It's funny because I actually two tattoos that I actually have a tattoo that says Crew Love, and then I also have a Get Rich or Die Trying tattoo. And then I also remembered the Big Crit lyric is, "If it don't touch my soul, I can't listen to it," from the Vent. So yeah, it's funny how you just I could talk about G Unit forever. Like I saw them play in New York at a club before they signed to Shady Aftermath. Like I was a teenager. Like I've been on these guys from day. I love them, and you're Queens, right? So
absolutely.
Did
you catch the Final Lap tour?
That, do you know what? Annoyingly, it was the only one I never got to see because when they came to the UK, I moved here. When I moved here, they were in LA 2 days before I moved here. And the thing is, one of my best friends, who is like one of the #1 tour managers, he's tour managed everybody. He was on the tour management team for that show, and I was like, he was going to hook me up, everything. I kept missing it. Everywhere I moved, I just wasn't where it was. It just wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. But I went to 50's first live show in the UK at Wembley. I still have my ticket. I was front row. Fabulous and Paul Kane were his support act.
That's what's up. I have one more question for you. Since we went, down this road with 50 Cent, you talked about, his rise to fame with the mixtapes and that sort of thing. Can you speak a little bit about the mixtape era and what it meant over in the UK how it's a relic at this point. You know, it's something we're really missing in the game right now. And I just want somebody ingrained in the culture to speak on that a little bit.
So the mixtape culture is my favorite, era is my favorite era of hip hop. Like there's no ifs, buts, or maybes about it. I still have all my original mixtapes that I have on CD that I used to buy. So in London, there was this store just off of Oxford Street. It was like behind Oxford Street. And it was called Dark and Cold. And I lived in the south of the UK. And I used to drive in my beat up Renault Clio every 2 weekends to London. It was like a 4.5-hour trek just to go to this store and buy DJ Clue mixtapes, K Slay mixtapes, DJ Envy mixtapes, DJ John mixtapes. Like I used to Green Lantern mixtapes. Green Lantern is one of my favorite DJs. He's a very good friend of mine now. Like those blend tapes that Green Lantern used to do were special.
Yeah.
Obviously the Who Kid mixtapes. I still have every single one I ever bought. Like Jadakiss, The Champ Is Here. Like
one of my favorites.
Those mixtapes. And you got to remember, it was like the way they introduced Cruise. So like G Unit was introduced that way. D Block, when obviously the Locks changed to D Block and they added J Hood, like that was how we, listen to these things and how remixes were put out there and how unreleased tracks. That was the era when Joe Budden was like rapping his ass off.
Music.
With the padded room tapes and
Mm-hmm.
like, so it was special to me because that was how I got the music before anybody else. And I would, to get certain mixtapes, I'd have to go on, because I always wanted the physicals. So I would order tapes from livemixtapes.com. There was another website called mixtapeusa.com, which I ordered a lot from. And I had a column in 2005 to 2007 in a magazine called Blues and Soul. It's like the longest running black music magazine in the UK. And I had a column and it was called The Corner. And I actually had like I created a chart and it was my personal mixtape chart for every fortnight of which mixtapes I thought were the best. And I would get Mixtape USA to send me a bunch of free mixtapes. And I would create my chart based on that. And that was how I, educated people on the mixtape scene. So for me, it was special. But for the greater, the broader spectrum of like hip hop fans, that, like we tell these kids, it's really funny you're asking me this question right now, because I had to interview this guy the other day called Patrick Cloud, and he hosts the Rap IQ show that Red Bull do. And we did the interview in my building because we have these business suites downstairs. And in the interview, I was talking to him about the mixtape era. And he's younger. And I was like, come up to my apartment. So he came up and I pulled them all out. And I was playing him shit. And he was like, what the fuck? And he was like, never heard this. And I was like,
he's hilarious. I've seen him on YouTube a lot. He's hilarious.
he's such a good kid. Like, and he really culture. But I'm playing him. I actually played him Jadakiss, The Champ Is Here mixtape. I was playing him. I have a DJ Corrupt tape that has 5 unreleased Eminem diss records, like Cannabitch going at Cannabis and like the track going at Benzino. And I was playing him this stuff, and he was like, wait, I've never heard these tracks. And I was playing him Joe Budden tracks. Like there's the I think it's the Dear Angela track where he's talking about his ex-girlfriend stabbing him. And he was like, wait, what is this stuff? And I was like, bruh, this right here is the greatest era in hip hop. Like everything, because it was like crate digging for mixtape fans that weren't DJs.
Oh, absolutely.
You had to go and find this shit and spend your money. And then outside of that, it was like the intro, there was when the internet became a thing. I was on GUnitPunked.us all the time, downloaded shit. And I was, in the early days of Dat Piff. And I've been a member of Boxton since the beginning. And I was downloading shit on Boxton when you used to be able to download shit on Boxton. It later became It's BX and you couldn't download stuff. That was how we found our shit. And then it became the blog era. So the mixtape era made way for the blog era. Right. But it was our crate digging. If you were a hip hop fan and you didn't have Jadakiss the Champ is here, or like, I don't know,
Yes.
Rap Phenomenon, the Tupac, when DJ Vlad was a fucking DJ.
Yeah, I mean, he was a real DJ.
Like
when he's actual DJ.
It was him and Harry, you know, what was it? Harry, what was that?
Dirty
DJ?
Harry.
Dirty Harry.
Yep.
And Green Lantern. And they were making these tapes, and it was Rap Phenomenon.
Mick Boogie.
They did the Biggie one.
Yeah.
And there's obviously you had the Nas Lost tapes.
Oh my goodness.
And
Green Lantern.
like that is how we found our shit.
Yeah, Big Mike. Don't forget about Big Mike.
I mean,
Re-Up Gang.
Yeah,
Re-Up Gang.
It was like Big Mike and the Street Sweepers, right?
And
it was like again the K Slay stuff and DJ Cool Kid. Like I remember the first time I got to listen to the Cassidy versus Freeway freestyle battles was on a Cool Kid tape.
It was a Cool Kid tape. Yep.
It was him and Cassidy. No, sorry. It wasn't. It was DJ On Point.
Yes, because it was very muffled. You couldn't really tell what was going on.
And it was like a Cassidy on DJ On Point tape, and his tag was "Is that what you want?" Chris Tucker from Money Talk.
Is that what you want? Yeah. That was his tag. Then throughout the entire mixtape, that was his tag. Yeah.
Right, and that's how I found a lot of this shit. Like because, and then again the internet, and I was using Kazaa to download shit like Kazaa and.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. Me and Sean were talking about Kaza. Yeah,
because I was my shit. Like I never did the what was the other one that everybody was on?
Napster.
I never did Napster. It just
I did Napster and LimeWire. I had like 5,000 songs on LimeWire.
And
I'm one of the reasons they don't exist anymore. Because I mean, I was pillaging daily.
Yeah,
right.
And you couldn't download them in full albums. You had to search individual tracks.
You're right. You had to drag
and then put it together.
And then
you had to do it, and then you'd have to make your playlist.
And they would be different bit rates, so the quality would be different.
Right.
And you'd put the be like, oh man, this is whack. And then sometimes you'd download the track and it wasn't actually the track, or you'd get a clean version. Like that's how I got a lot of those early G Unit freestyles of, you know, like 50 rapping over, you know, Raphael Sadiq beats and Black Rock beats and that was.
Well, you know what the mixtapes did for that era for me is that they made us stop listening to the media and the magazines so much. We had a conduit to tell us who was hot and what was popping. Like when you said D Block, I'm still remembering the first time I got the mixtape that had "This is D Block, mighty D Block, everywhere we go." It might be. I might have that CD over here still. I'm like you. I'm a collector. I have Rockefeller's "The Empire Strikes Back" with the Beanie Siegel diss towards Kiss over the "Put Your Hands Up" beat. Yeah. I still remember where I was when I got that in Greensboro, and like we put it on, and we were like, "Oh shit, Kiss is in trouble."
When they were beefing with each other, and that was how it was. It wasn't like, you know, dropping it online. You had to get these tapes to hear that shit, or you had to tune into like Funk Flex on Hot 97, and he'd run it back like a million times. Or for us, it was Tim Westwood on the Radio 1 Rap Show. Like that is how we would digest that shit too. And then it'd be like, right, how do I get my hands on this tape?
But I like that parallel you made with the digging into crates. Like if you're not a, you know, actual producer or DJ, because you went to your local mom and pop spot and was checking for the latest, hottest mixtapes, you know, to hear those disses. So I've never heard that analogy or that parallel made, but that's exactly what it is, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah. And like, you know, even the street, I remember coming to New York and being in Harlem and just seeing dudes selling mixtapes on the street. I was like, take all my money. Take all of it. I don't care if you've reprinted the artwork. I don't care. And then what I always loved that was so clever about those mixtape websites was you would order the mixtape and pay for it. And when it arrived, on the inside of the artwork, it would have a price. And on the website, it'd say that you were buying the artwork and the CD came free. Like they were trying their hardest to find a way.
That's that loophole.
I was always like, yo, this is so clever. Or it would say for promotional use only or whatever. Like, because obviously they were stealing that shit from labels. And like talking about mixtapes, did you guys see the mixtape documentary?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I haven't.
Is it on Netflix or?
It's Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Paramount.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Well, I think it was good, but it was way too short. There was a lot of stuff they did not touch on.
They can't.
And it's like
They
I was really annoyed because I was like, yo, this could have been a series.
Well, they couldn't go that far with it.
They didn't even really like think about, people were going to forget this too. What about the Justo Mixtape Awards?
Right.
Like Lloyd Banks won Mixtape like Artist of the Year 2 years running. No one else did that.
Right.
That's why I love Banks.
He was killing it though.
Yo,
but they couldn't go deep into that. They couldn't go deep into that bag. It would have opened up a lot of different.
It needed to be a series. I mean,
Hero Hip Hop Talks Will did that, so hopefully they ain't have to go through that. Like we got the exclusive.
hey, look, I'm in LA now. Maybe I need to just start pitching stuff like this and be like, yo, we need to series, like, and do a different mixtape DJ for every episode.
I mean, the thing that's beautiful about this generation, that where our generation is kind of conditioned differently. If they don't like some shit, they just go get it cracking. They're like, you want to know it? I think I'm going to build an app for that to fix that problem.
Right.
So it's like we can fix that problem ourselves.
It's like what It's The Real did. They made that Blog Era podcast series to talk about the blog era. It was like, if no one else is going to do it, we'll just do it ourselves.
Right. It's the consumer is different now. The consumer has become the consumer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Will, we appreciate you, bro. Thank you so much. You dropped so many jewels. This conversation, it felt natural, felt good. We appreciate your hip hop pedigree. Congrats again on your position. Congrats on everything you got going on, man. Like this, looking through your bio, there's so many different layers to Ill Will. We could have been on this call for another 2 to 3 hours just to parse through the different departments of your cycle of hip hop and culture. But we appreciate you giving us a chamber of you today and just spending that time with us. AG too.
It's an honor, man. Like I said, I always love. For me, I think that what I love about hip hop most is just talking to people. Is literally just listening to everybody else's stories and how hip hop affected them, how it saved them, how it changed their life. And it's like you said, talking shop, right? Like just being. I didn't have this culture in the UK because it wasn't a thing, but like barbershop culture, right? I wish I'd grown up in America and just could go and sit in a barbershop and debate top fives and talk about the latest battle or things like that. So it's beautiful to be able to do things like this with fellow hip hop aficionados who love the culture as much as I do and listening to everybody's stories. And it's great that all four of us on this call are from different areas. It's like we're not all biased towards one. Like it's great that we can have the discussion and talk about different eras and different experiences and like you say, this is just a chamber. Look, I'm happy to jump on anytime you want to talk, man. If I get to just talk about hip hop, I am down any day of the week. Like this shit gave me everything, so I'm giving it tenfold.
Okay, Will, I'm throwing you a curve to end this interview. Adele or Amy Winehouse?
Amy Winehouse every single time.
Yes. Like, okay. Now I'm fucking with you, Will.
But let me tell you this. Not many people remember this name. When Adele first came out, there was another young lady who was being tipped to be like the next big thing over Adele, and they came out at the same time, and I was always a fan of her before Adele as well. And that's
is that the chick that's singing on Common's album? Is that who you're talking about?
No, you're talking about Lily Allen. I'm talking about Duffy. Like just go Google Duffy and her first album and listen to it. She's from Wales. Her voice, oh my fucking god, it's unbelievable. And her first album was huge over here, but like her second album didn't do too well, and then she was going through some personal things and she just kind of disappeared. And it was funny because there was a dude around that time too called Daniel Merriweather who was signed, I believe, to Mark Ronson, and he was a singer. And his debut album was amazing and produced by Mark Ronson. And Adele is on one of the songs. And that was that era. I worked in a record store at that time. So like I was a journalist on like as well, but I worked in a record store. And that whole era was a thing. But like Amy is Amy, bro. I mean, Nas co-signed Amy. Most Def co-signed Amy. Like that's all we need.
Absolutely.
I think Back to Black is one of the best albums I've ever heard. So I can't really argue with that. And like the production, Mark Ronson, production's flawless.
Listen, Mark Ronson and Salam Remy did their damn thing.
Yeah,
They do.
perfect match, perfect blend.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Will, we appreciate you, man. Thank
No,
you
no
so
worries.
much.
Guys, thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
And
Thank
yeah,
you.
hopefully next
this
time,
was
and
fun.
like just hit me up anytime. Like hit me on Insta or whatever, and like I'm happy to share my number with you guys. Like whatever, let's connect. And if you're in
Absolutely.
LA, hit me up.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Cool. I'll
Appreciate
catch you
it.
guys later.
Peace.
Appreciate
Peace,
it.
peace, peace.
Thanks.